Silence! Silence!
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. And fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me.
No, Gifford. Only different in your mind.
There is no time now for grief.
You must act there or get there.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
Luminous being so, not this crude measure.
Life is choice. You can choose to be a victim or anything else you'd like to be.
Well, how would we start?
There is no starting or stopping. Only doing.
Hi, welcome back to Curious Animus podcast. I'm your host, Scott, and today I have with me yet again to finish a overdue conversation on energy and magic is Raven Keefer of No Apologies podcast. And yeah, Raven, tell everybody where they can find you real quick, because you push out so
All
much
right, folks.
content.
If you are hunting me, first thing I always point out is on YouTube I have playlists that are esoteric and occult that will take you months to get through. But there's so much information in this playlist you can't miss. And then my podcasts are on Spreaker. That's my home podcasting site, but you can find me on all the repeaters under Raven Keefer or No Apologies, and you can't miss my logo. And then it's Raven Keefer NA on Twitter and No Apologies Enough Said on Instagram.
Outstanding. I especially enjoy the Elders Speak playlist that he has on there. It's pretty rad. There's a lot of Hopi prophecy. There's Black Elk Speaks and some of his stuff and things that have foregone through the eddies of time. A lot of people might be able to get something out of.
Black Elk Speaks. And if you want a book about traditional Native understanding, Black Elk and his daughter, and I'm trying to remember her first name. I've met her a few times. A wonderful, amazing woman. But Black Elk Speaks is an amazing book, and I actually was lucky enough to get it on the playlist on YouTube.
It's good stuff. It really is. I've enjoyed it. I've listened to it 1.5 times now when I can get the time in. But so our conversation today is going to be a continuation of last time, wherein we were talking about energy, how we absorb and discharge electrons through various activities in our environments. We were just talking before I hit record here, and I was talking about how there was a book I read called Vril Vital Magnetism, and it talks about how the human body is to be consuming energy from the air, which is full of electrons. Static electricity is natural everywhere. Then you have water, right? The life-giving substance. And it says that when you're drinking water, you should take small sips, let it sit on the tongue for a moment or two, and then swallow. And I couldn't help but notice that when Mark Zuckerberg was in the congressional hearing, he was taking itty-bitty sips and letting it sit in his tongue for a minute before swallowing. So in doing this, we're absorbing the electrons through the tongue, and when you breathe through the nose, it's through the sinus cavities and the nerve endings in the back of there.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool stuff.
Well, when you mention that, I do the same thing with my coffee. I'll take a drink of my coffee, I let it sit in my mouth, and then I swallow. And I never even thought about the old teachings and the other things that I'd come across that brought me to doing that as a habit. But I do the same thing with water or tea. And I never thought about until you said it. I've studied a lot of the old esoteric and energetic things just because of what I do. But it's really interesting that you can actually see the video. I know what video you're talking about. It was during the congressional hearings.
That's right.
um, and you got to figure that he was probably under some pressure, so having that extra energy surely didn't hurt him any.
Absolutely. There's a big difference between watching Mark Zuckerberg in his congressional hearing versus Bill Gates in his congressional hearing in the 90s, where
Well, you know,
that dude,
Bill, I hate to give that man any more grief than I already do, but I remember the videos from back in the day with him, and he looked like he was on some seriously bad drugs. He would sit and rock back and forth, and the only time he actually reacted was when it was his turn to speak. He was just sitting and rocking back and forth all the time. And a lot of us in those days, especially people my age, still were like, man, I don't know what kind of drugs the dude was on, but it must have been some pretty good stuff.
must have been something. So it also, the book Vital Magnetism also talks about consuming your food, and the American Medical Association, if I recall right, suggests you chew your food at least 28 times before you swallow it to aid in digestion. But
Yes.
This book says that you should continue to chew your food until there is no longer any flavor left in it. Like it's almost completely broken down by your saliva and your mastication, and that makes it easier to digest. But also you're through the tongue and those nerve endings, right? Because the nervous system is an electrical system. You're picking up
Yes.
charge through that stuff. So
Well, there is a thing with the food supply though that we have to be aware of. With the growing methods and the hybridization and the GMOs, and then you have the processing and the shipping and the irradiation and the UV light and all the other stuff that they do to the food today. It has been shown that a lot of the food that we get actually has negative energy, not positive. And I know a lot of people aren't aware of that, but you have to be very careful. Like I much prefer the taste and the overall feel of the food I grow myself than even the organic stuff that I get at the grocery store.
absolutely.
So, but there's a positive change between you and food. There's a lot of people who do a lot of work and when it comes to naturalization of your life, and they show that fruit is like fantastic. It gives you a lot of positive charge. Whereas when you eat certain other kinds of vegetables that aren't common, used to not be common for people to eat, they actually provide a negative charge. So that would kind of explain the reason why they weren't a common food before, you know?
Sure. Sure. Like even gout, right? They
Yeah.
used to call it a rich man's disease because not everybody could afford to eat so much protein that they would develop this issue.
Oh yeah, that's
You know,
true. Well, and they would eat the proteins, but they wouldn't intake the poor man's food, which was the fruits and stuff that would give them the vitamin C and the iodine.
yeah, the iodine's an
So,
interesting thing. Because I've been listening to your magical podcast or podcast on magic talking about using salt sands the iodine
hmm
for doing sealing and stuff, and I was curious as to why the iodine would be an issue.
hmm I missed that.
Oh, the iodine in the salt when you're doing things with it. Why would you not necessarily want that in a fluid that
I
you're
always use
using to
I
seal?
always use non-iodized salt if I am doing a seal, and I can honestly tell you it is the way that I was taught. But also, for a long time, iodized salt was only for your consumption. It wasn't for like if you were using it for something else. Um, the other thing about iodine too is the charge that it
Okay.
has. um, when you're sealing for magic, what you're doing is you're basically creating an electronic barrier. Anything that has a charge to it does not like to cross salt. Okay. People say, well, salt carries a charge. That's true. But in using it in sealing something, what you're doing is you're creating air to ground charge that is like putting up a wall. Um, it's the only way I can really explain it. And iodine creates like a negative charge, and it
Okay.
seems to not be as effective.
Okay. It makes sense. I was thinking maybe it was like just a purity kind of thing, but that also makes sense that it would have its own charge. As we discussed before, everything has its own frequency and vibration. So adding extra
Well,
ingredients into a recipe, if you will, might not be
yeah.
awesome.
Well, the other thing that you were just talking about was breathing through the nose. And I just mentioned this in one of the Real Magic podcasts that will be airing, I think, on the 21st. But it used to be so adamant that you did not breathe through your mouth that there were tribes, a lot of tribes, if a baby was born that insisted on breathing through its mouth, they would put a leather strap over its mouth and force it to breathe through the nose. That's how adamant the old people used to be about not breathing through your mouth. It is a whole different type of breath. Now, when I do meditations, I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. And if I'm doing something super physical, it's the same thing, in through my nose, out through my mouth. Even swimming back in the days when I was a competitive swimmer, I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. And it's a much more efficient, I don't understand all the mechanics of it, but it's a much more efficient way of picking up the electrons in the air and the oxygen.
So it does make sense. I'm kind of surprised that you'd be like doing like the butterfly or anything like that, doing nose breathing. To me, it's just surprising on the physics. But I'm not a swimmer, so more of
Well,
a rock when it comes to the water.
when I did butterfly, when I came up out of the water, excuse me, y'all, this weather is not being very kind to my allergies. But when I used to do butterfly, when I'd come up out of the water, I'd tip my head down and I could literally suck in as much oxygen as I possibly could through my nose and my mouth. But when I was doing backstroke or freestyle, I really didn't have any trouble breathing through my nose. And I used to get in trouble with the coaches for doing it that way because I'd breathe in through my nose and then on the next breath, when my head would come up, I'd breathe out. But a lot of it had to do with conditioning too.
Sorry about that. The the absorption of the electrons through the nose is it's an interesting thing, right? We know that everything is comprised of energy, absolutely everything.
Oh yeah.
So when it comes to the food, and like you were saying with the various, all right, let me backtrack to where you had talked about the food that you had grown yourself, right? People who end up coming to my table generally tell me how nice the food is and how good it is, and I don't know if they're being just kind, because people can be that way sometimes, or they really do like it, and when the plate is essentially licked clean, I know which way it goes.
Yeah.
But so love and intention really does play a part in everything.
Absolutely.
You do, so like when it comes to your gardening, your food will taste more vibrant when you're out there talking to your plants and loving your plants, and it sounds so woo, but it really does have an effect, and they've studied this scientifically, where they have a greenhouse, they have a guy come in, slap a plant around and burn it and leave, and then all the plants, when that man returns to the greenhouse, will have a electrically measured effect due to his presence, but not the presence of other people who have not had that kind of an effect on the environment.
Absolutely. All things are living. It's a really hard thing today with the traditionals. All things are living. So if you affect one, you affect all of them. They've proven that with the greenhouse experiments. They've proven that with, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, with the labeled bottles. I love you and I hate you, and you're tasty and you're disgusting.
Dr. Emoto.
And Emoto, there you go. his experiments have proven that the energy that you put out towards something is the energy that you get back. And for me, people who have listened to my podcast know I love gardening. I love growing the flowers. I love growing my own food. I enjoy being out in the dirt and the muck and working with the plants. So I can't imagine that the way that I feel about doing it doesn't have some effect on the food that is grown.
Oh, it
I mean,
absolutely would.
uh,
Absolutely.
it's like my garlic. I like hot garlic. I really do. I like hot, spicy garlic. And I bought this garlic years ago, and it's flourished quite well. But it was supposed to be a semi-mild, almost semi-sweet garlic for sauce, and it has turned into some of the hottest, most tasty garlic you'll ever get your hands on. It kind of
So,
responded to me, is all I can figure.
wow, I'm sure that it would, especially if you're being that you love the garlic and gardening. If you're out there regularly, it's going to you'll have that field interaction once again. I've
Well,
also
and we
heard.
go back. Oh, go ahead.
I've also heard that if you take seeds and place them in your mouth to give them that first burst of moisture from your own body, it picks up from your DNA that you're emitting through that saliva. And
I don't know about that, but I wanted to start some new apple trees, and I wanted to start them from seed, and I have never done it before. And one of the old timers here says, "Hey, look, when you get ready to germinate those seeds, put them in your mouth and stick them under your tongue if you can. So there's only so many you can put there." He says, "And drink some of that fresh water that you got from your well." And I'm like, okay. Um, so I actually stuck them the first batch under my tongue, and I drank a whole glass of. I got really good water from my well. It's full of really good minerals and what have you. And I drank a glass, and we put them in the refrigerator over the winter. And then I did the same thing with the other batch, and I have never in my life had a full set of seeds. Every last one of them germinated.
that's actually
So
really impressive.
I I, I would have never thought of it. It was a 84-year-old traditional that told me this. And every last one of them germinated. So I have to I have to buy more tree pots because I'm going to have more than I intended.
Yeah, man. Oh, oh, poor you. All the yeah, yeah. Good problems, man. Good problems to
Yeah, it's
have.
terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's awesome. Is so like I like pawpaws, and I've only had one, and but I've got some trees, and they're sprouting, and they're reacting well to the environment. And you do your homework too. You still have to provide nutrients and things like that.
Hmm.
These guys like decaying matter, so lots of leaf litter, sawdust, things like that. But
Hmm.
not sawdust has a propensity to remove nitrogen from the ground, if I remember right. So
Yeah.
you got to be cautious. But we're talking energy, not garden. I'm going to get off on a whole tangent with that. But
Well, yeah, but garden is as important as anything else when you talk about energy because you have plants that survive and thrive real well together. Now, part of it is the chemicals that they put out that protect each other. But the other thing too is they have done field studies with electromagnetics and electrical fields, and they have found that certain plants actually bond together electronically in your garden. And if you grow them side by side, they do exponentially better as far as production. And it's strictly an electromagnetic field between the plants, which means that this is electric charge. Um, there's something to be said about understanding how they communicate. We're completely out of the loop until just in the last 20 years. Excuse me, the last 20 years.
I wonder, as everything has its own like resonant frequency, like we're talking about, and has its own magnetic field. If the fields are complementary, I would imagine very much like music. You have two different plants that have tones, let's call them for lack of a better word, that complement one another to create
Exactly.
a chord, right? So that it does make sense. It really does. Everything is music. Everything is in a state of flux all the time. There's tension and release. That's It's the way music works. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. You know, winter,
Oh
spring,
yeah.
summer, fall, the whole thing. There's always cycles and waves. So
But we were talking about energy, and gardening is a very good example. I have studied a lot of stuff that I never thought I never thought about it. And they had this gentleman from Japan who was working with a Russian scientist, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but he was actually taking electromagnetic imagery of plants, and he would set them in pots. Now they weren't planted together in the soil, but he would move the pots, and he would take the 24-hour photo to see what the change in the field was. And he started discovering that if you put this and this together, if you put this and that together, they increased their field. And then once he started figuring that out, he would leave them together, and their production would be much larger than normal. So it's another thing about energy that we have been completely disinformed about or misinformed about. And I think it's just as important to the conversation about our energy and the energy fields around us. Because I'm gonna have to find that link and send it to you, because there's actually a video of some of the experiments. But if we can figure that out for all the plants that we like to grow, just think about how much more productive we would be, even with our small gardens.
yeah, I doubt that it's limited just to plants. You know, they say that you become who you hang around, you know,
Oh
so
yeah.
field interferometry, where you're around productive people or high energy people, low energy, pessimists, optimists, purists, lovists, hippies, militants, whatever. We
Well,
tend to, yeah.
Well, yeah, if you look at certain events that have happened over the last few years, and you actually look at the people who are the inciters in those events are the calm ones. They're the ones that have their energy focused, and they're able to produce reactions in other people. Whereas the ones who are excited are just going along with the crowd. And that's something very important to understand, is the person who is calm and in control of his energy is the one that is directing things, not the people who are agitated.
I found that to be very true in your podcast, talking about people who, while you are experiencing emotions, remain in control of yourself. In the little bit of studying of chemistry that I have done, something that I've come to understand through learning to weld and whatnot was dealing with some gases, right? And what they
Oh
call
yeah.
the noble gases
Hmm.
are non-reactive gases. They're gases that don't chemically react to any other thing. And so they are true to themselves all the time. And so
Hmm.
be non-reactive yourself, that way you can control yourself more than you're allowing other people to control. Because if the internet's good at anything, it's gathering information. And so if you're on the internet and you're talking about, oh, these sons of bitches, that and that, can you believe that bastard, and you get all
Oh yeah.
reactive and emotional. Well, damn, they're just taking a note, like, okay, he doesn't like that, he doesn't like that, he doesn't like that, oh, that's good for him. And then,
Well, and the more data they get on your reactions, then the more able they are to manipulate you to their will, and that's magic, yo. That's the reason why I'm doing this series.
it's real thing, and there are a pitchfork doesn't have enough tines to cover how many angles of, or vectors, I guess you could say, of influence there are on humanity in general.
Oh yeah.
We influence ourselves all the time, especially with music and the music industry in itself. As much as I've enjoyed music, I feel that I kind of have to distance myself from it a little bit, because now I'm learning the mechanics of how it manipulates people.
Oh, how funny! I just recorded one of the podcasts in that Real Magic series, and I was just talking about this, dude. Literally last night when I recorded it, I talked about how there are still songs that I listen to, that if I know I'm having a low energy day, I turn that song on, and all of a sudden, dude, I am ready to kick some ass, right? And then I have other songs that I know that if I listen to it, it'll bring my energy level down. And I use it that way. Now, see, y'all understand there's a difference between it using you and you using it, I know that if I listen to Thunderstruck by AC/DC, I will be able to pick up your car and throw it across the road. Whereas if I listen to something, say, by Moody Blues, it will bring me down to a nice calm level, energy wise. And I can listen to it and I can just kind of like mosey on through my day. Now, I am using it. It's not using me. And that's where your awareness has to come in. If you do not use your awareness, then you are being played by the music rather than you playing the music.
It's so awareness to our environment and situational awareness is probably more important than ever, even though people generally are encouraged to not be aware of their surroundings, what's going on in pretty much every facet of their life. We're taught
Absolutely.
to focus on one thing and keep your eyes on the prize and don't mind anything that's coming up in the peripherals.
Well,
But
if
if
any of you listening to us have ever taken martial arts and you had a good sensei, the first thing your sensei told you was you always have to be aware of your surroundings. And that's everything, you all. That's the music, that's the TV, that's the tree that is waking up in the spring. It's something wrong with the color of your plants that you're growing. A friend of yours just doesn't look right today. You can't explain why, but they just don't look right. That is awareness of everything that's around you. And that's a lot of that has to do with being able to sense the energy of things. Um, it's what you and I were talking about. The eye generates its own charge. Sorry
yeah,
about that, you all. The eye generates its own charge, and then you get in return a visual of what's going on around you. People with energy, it's a really hard concept to describe in just a few minutes, but you can look at all kinds of imagery online that shows the field of the body, and it looks just like a magnet. You have a field that comes out from your solar plexus. It goes up and around you, comes back in through the top of your head, goes out from underneath you, literally. If you've expanded and controlled your energy, it goes out from underneath you and comes back to your solar plexus, just like a magnet. And that is the human biometric field. It's also the reason why that 6 foot distance was terrible, because outside of 6 foot, most people don't connect. And they knew this when they did it.
yep. The heart's electromagnetic field can be measured 3 feet in any direction from the body or from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so when everybody's 6 feet apart, man, you've got everybody being isolated instead of being interconnected like we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
I mean, you still need space to move around and stuff, but not having that connection is something. So it's cool that it's generated from the solar plexus, which is essentially the same location as the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart shape that everybody has come to know is not what the heart actually looks like. The heart is much more like a cone. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And watching I watched a little video that had the electrical action in motion, and it looks like it's swirling. The electrical charge moves across it just the same as you see dirt and things flying around in a tornado. It's in a
Oh yes.
spiraling, contracting motion, dude. And so that vortex, if it from anywhere you take it, between the heart, tornadoes, shamans were known to steer tornadoes in the past. If you look at Dan Winter's work, he's an electrical engineer with
Yes.
does Therify, right? He talks about that too. That cone that is generating that action is if you were to dome off the top of it, you'd have a hyperboloid or an hourglass shape, and that is the counter space, as I understand it, to the magnetic toroid, which is some people call it a donut.
Mm-hmm.
So those two things kind of fit together and interact in a way that I have not come to fully understand, but it does work.
Well, it creates a 0 point where the energy is in stasis, which should tell you something, because that 0 point that everybody's talking about and some people are misleading you about that 0 point where everything is in stasis. If you are someone who can meditate and can focus your energy, what you are doing is you are focusing that energy at that 0 point within your solar plexus. And what you are doing is building up your own energetic field. Um, by doing so, you create a protective bubble around you from other influences. People who do qigong use that energy to focus energy around them, to light fires, to launch people, 40, 50 yards away from them, 40, 50 feet away from them, to break bricks just by setting their hands on it. That is one of those lost arts of using the energy around you. And interestingly enough, it's exactly how Tesla's tower worked. It was set up the same way.
Dome top. Yeah.
Yeah. Something else to talk about the cone of the energy around your heart. If you actually look, if you take that side image that they give you that shows that energy moving around that cone, and you looked at it from the top, it would be a spiral.
Yes, absolutely.
The spiral of life.
Oh, damn. Yeah, it's present everywhere, and it's amazing to me that they put a lot of this esoteric stuff in Disney movies.
Oh yeah,
like I see the symbolism all over the place, but they don't break any of it down. I've got some real mixed feelings about Disney in general, but
oh yes, absolutely. Well, um, my bunch like to watch that video called Shiny, and it is from I'm trying to remember the name of this. It's Moana, I think,
okay.
the Hawaiian show.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's a character in there that's like a crab, and he's all covered in a crab or lobster or whatever. He's all covered in shiny like jewels and what have you. And when he spins, he's doing the exact same thing that you see in that toroidal embodiment of electricity. I found that really interesting. It's the first time I noticed it was a couple of days ago when my bunch was watching that video. So there's a lot of that esoteric right out there in the open in the Disney movies.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's not. It's been kind of hijacked. When it comes to like the spirals and the hearts within hearts and what the FBI says that's all about, and I'm sure there's an element of that, but also older than the Mambla and whatnot, as it were. Like it's ancient as shit. Like it's in petroglyphs that are I don't know how old they are. They're so ancient.
Yeah. Tens of thousands of years, they think, on some cases.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Just look at the Mayan calendar. It's a spiral. So.
Oh yeah. Well, look at the a really good example of energetic fields and people being aware of it long before we were. Look at the dancing man symbology that they have on all these different petroglyphs around the world, and we are just now starting to see those sprites appear in our sky again. So they had an understanding of electrical fields that they could demonstrate in whatever way that they could, that we have either been hidden from us or has been lost for a while. I would insert the first more than I would the second. But when you talk about the human electric field, in the 1800s, they started doing research with electromagnetics on the human body and electrical charge in the human body. There's a reason why we have TENS units for healing musculature. It's an electric. It's their pads. They put them on the muscle, and it makes it flex and relax.
Mm-hmm.
They understand the electric current in the body has to go a certain direction. They do the same thing with acupuncture. That's one of the oldest healing traditions. Acupuncture is about directing the electrical field in your body so that it's running in the correct direction.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are long time proven. However, they didn't convert those things to us in the West when they started telling us about them. So like the Chinese understood it was the flow of energy through the body. So here in the West, they're like, oh, well, they just put them things in there and it stimulates your skin, the nerves in your skin, right? They didn't explain that it's actually doing much more than that. It was a way to try to attempt to obfuscate the information that the Chinese and Asians had that had been lost to the West.
It's definitely been poo-pooed in favor of provable scientific petrochemical and surgical methods. Now
Yeah,
I'm
we
not saying run out and get some powdered deer penis by just cause, but
we
with the acupuncture, as I understand it, the direction clockwise or counterclockwise in which they turn the needle, it has different effects depending on where they put them in the nervous system.
well, really good example is I went and I had acupuncture done when I was actually in Southeast Asia, and man, I got up the next day, I could barely move. It felt like somebody had thrown me out in the middle of the road and run over me with one of those hobbled back down to the shop, and I said, something ain't right. I said, something's not right. And they brought me in, and this old person comes out, and he looks at me really funny. And he says something, and the one that could speak English says, "You're American." And I said, "Well, no, I'm Native American." And they just looked at me, and I said, American Indian? Oh, man, they did a whole different setup on me, and the old man is the one that directed it. They got done with me, they burnt their incense, and they did all that stuff. And man, when I got up, I felt good for almost a year. And that proves that not everybody's energy runs the same either.
Right, absolutely, I buy that. It's interesting that the genes have so much effect over time, even though as intermingled as we are now, which I would say is a lot more intermingled
Than most would like to think, yes.
yeah, than a few hundred years ago, even.
Well, with the energetic field stuff, what I'm always trying to communicate to people is I think your energy field has more to do with your experience, your attitude, and your personal emotional and mental control than your genetics. Because I have seen people who were just, as diverse genetically as possible, who are all doing Tai Chi together, and their energy fields and the way that they worked and flowed together synced up. Now, that shows that there's something beyond your physical appearance or your genetic history. Um, because we had this one guy that was about 6'8", and he was from Africa. We had this little itty bitty teeny tiny, and I'm not making fun. We had this teeny tiny little Asian gal that was with us, and then you had me, and I'm just like a bull in a china shop back in those days. And then we had a guy who looked like Drago, Dolph Lundgren from the Rocky movies, as our instructor. And this whole wide group of people synchronized doing Tai Chi. Um, the energy fields, I think, are more about your ability to control yourself than they are about the environment around you. Because if you're in control of yourself, the environment's not controlling you, right? That's what we were saying about music.
Yep, and noble gases, it does absolutely make sense or ring true.
And don't get me wrong, y'all. I like jujitsu. If I have to do things, and of course now I'm a dirty fighter, you all. If I have to do something on the street, I don't play by rules like you do when you're competing. Okay, I just don't. That is not effective. However, I love jujitsu. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed Hapkido and Taekwondo. As I have gotten older, have found Tai Chi and Qigong to be exponentially better than those hard kata, hard striking martial arts. Why? Because it keeps me in balance. If I'm in balance, it doesn't matter what somebody who is coming towards me is doing.
There's something to that, and just situational awareness again. Reading other people's energy and intent, because people can approach you with a smile and have murder in the eyes, as it were. And if you can't differentiate the two, you may get yourself into a pickle.
Well, and the other
when to get
thing
out.
too, I always talk about the middle path. Well, if you don't pick left or right, or you don't pick that door or that door, and you just walk down the middle, then you're not actually participating either. And that's an energetic state of being. It's hard for people to understand who are so caught up in everything going on around them, but I'm an observer. I'm not a participant.
Does that roll into the I've heard it in the law of one saying, like, the selfish path, you have to be like 98% selfish or something like that, and to be in the I guess you could say generous or loving path, you need to contribute like 50% of your energy outwards. It, when you're saying the energy paths, they're like, let's call it black and white for lack of for clarity. That gray path, just not really choosing to interact and just kind of play it neutral, like Tibet. You know what I mean? Just
Hmm.
down the middle, gonna do my own thing.
Well, for me, what I have found is that my energy maintains itself at a level. I don't pay attention to this. I don't pay attention to that as far as direct involvement. Now, if it's wrong, I'll point it out. People that watch my posts and listen to my podcast will understand that. I have no problems with calling out something that is obviously wrong, and we should. But I don't invest the emotions into it. I don't invest any more energy than I need to state the fact and point out what's going on. And then I go on about my business. I have always said that when you're in a position that I'm in, especially having gotten older, which I never expected to do, folks, I didn't expect to live to be more than about 24, 25 at the most. um, and I have more than doubled that. Woohoo!
Well done, well done, man.
Well, it's just the life I lived, you all, and the job that I had. I flew into places that everybody else was running out of. I mean, or trying to run out of. But for me, it's like, as I've gotten older, I've realized that my investment should not be my energy, my life energy, or any more time than necessary than to address or redress grievances and go on. It makes you singular in the way that you exist, but it also maintains this. And I tell folks, I'm angry all the time. If you've seen the movie with the Hulk, and they say, well, how do you control the Hulk? And he says, how do you keep from getting angry? And Bruce Banner turns around and looks and says, what do you mean? I'm angry all the time. I am angry all the time when I see all the injustice and the horrors that are going on around me. But it doesn't mean that the anger drives my car. It might power the car, but it's not driving the car. So there's no crashes that way. Um, and that's something that people don't think about energetically with your emotions. Think about movies and music and even the news. It's all about using your emotions to manipulate you. They want your emotions to drive the vehicle. And in the old days, when they talked about meditation, what they said is you want your emotions to be fine. If you're angry, you're angry. If you're sad, you're sad. That's fine because that's being human. But you do not let your emotions get up on top of the Wells Fargo wagon and drive it. Your emotions are supposed to be the horses giving you energy and impetus to do things. But you are always supposed to be the driver. And a lot of people have forgotten that. They let their emotions drive them rather than letting their emotions be the power that drives them to action. Because if you're in control of your emotions, you're going to make a positive action. If you've got a grievance, for example, instead of getting angry and letting your anger drive you and making all kinds of mistakes, you say, okay, now why am I angry? Well, this is not right. Then you address the problem rather than letting your emotions, your anger address the problem. And people today, it looks like, they call it self-control, you all. But today, self-control is like absent in so many people.
It's a hard lesson for me when I realized that we're all these singular little points on an overarching consciousness, God, whatever you want to put a name on, or put a name to it. Once I figured that out, it kind of put Jesus talking about love your enemy into a entirely different context. So as much as I may disapprove with the antics of, let's say, Bill Clinton or Biden or
Yeah.
name a Republican, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. The point is, instead of sitting there and holding them and their image and their name in your head and attaching an energy to it of like hate or disgust or whatever, just know that they're doing their own thing just as much as you are. You don't have to approve of it by any standard, but you don't need to exert your own essence and energy on something that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people would say that, all these things that they're doing are directly affecting your lives. And a lot of things that these people does affect your life. But if you maintain your balance and you withhold your energy and your life force, for that matter, don't dedicate time to them. If you're dedicating your time to them, they're taking your life energy in the time that you're giving them. Shame on you. Acknowledge that these are disgusting, heinous actions that they are committing, and address it as you need to. I do posts, I do podcasts, and then go on about your business. You are giving confirmation to somebody else. Yes, I see this, right? And yes, you should see this too. But come on, let's have a laugh. you know, um, that's the most dangerous thing to these people is if you can acknowledge that they are worthless. Well, they may not be worthless, but their actions and behaviors are heinous and disgusting and worthless to humanity. If you can acknowledge that and then turn on a laugh podcast or a comedian of your choice and laugh, you have just taken all the power away from them by changing your energy to something positive and ignoring their negativity. And that's really how you stop these people. If you want to stop this stuff, quit giving them energy, quit giving them your time, because your time is as valuable as theirs, and your energy could be used to grow food, to interact with your family. Don't forget the bread and circuses too. I know people love their sports, but the Romans loved their sports while the bread was being poisoned and their water was poisoned.
Yeah, don't drink your water out of lead aqueducts. It's not your friend. So, indeed, and as we know that the brain is in basically an electrical firestorm all the time while you're doing thought work or thinking about anything. Don't waste that discharge in your brain on something that brings unhappiness to you.
I heard that. Cute kid.
Yeah.
But the thing with me is like, they say as above, so below, and they're starting to take electronic images of the universe. And when you look at the electronic images of the universe, it looks like the synapses firing in our brains. And the universe doesn't seem to be too worried about what's going on. It just kind of goes on about its business, and it just keeps firing from one place to the next. Should be a lesson for us at the macro level to bring down to our micro level. All that energy that you have naturally is yours to do with it what you will. Now, if you want to throw it away, I say your path is not mine. But when there's enough people over, several thousand years explaining that you don't do that, and you just ignore them, then there's not much we can do, regardless of what kind of podcast we want to do. I find it very interesting that today we see all these energy fields going up around us. You can pick what you want. You got radio frequency radiation, you got microwave radiation, you got electromagnetic fields, you got electro pulses from the 5G that has been installed everywhere. And I hear a lot of people talking about how bad they feel. Oh, let's not forget the Wi-Fi. We got the Wi-Fi everywhere now, and they boosted that to 5G. Most of your public schools, y'all, went to 5G Wi-Fi where the kids were not there. Just in case y'all didn't know that. And it's a lot higher signal rate than the old 4G system that they had in, which worked just fine inside of a building. So it makes you wonder, right? But anyway, the whole point that I see, well, this will make your knees hurt, and if you're older, you don't heal as well. And these are lies that they tell you all. You know, they will tell you that, well, if you're in this, it'll make you sick. If you believe it, shame on you. Why not believe if you have to believe something? Why not believe that it don't make a damn bit of difference? You're going to be just fine, and you're going to heal just fine. That's a lot more powerful than their lie that you're going to get sick and it's going to make you feel terrible.
The placebo effect is still in effect, and if you can self-replicate that in various other aspects of your life, then you're certainly taking back your control and your sovereignty from where I'm sitting.
Well, for years I heard people, and I brought this up in somewhere before, but for years people said, as you get older, you need to sleep more. And what I actually found out is when I actually did sleep more, I felt worse. I averaged between 3 and 4 hours of sleep a night, and I function fantastically. If I try to sleep for 6 or 8, I wake up and I feel like I have been beat up, thrown on a rodeo horse, run over by a rodeo bull, and a victim of the clown card game at the rodeo. I sleep between. There are nights that I sleep as little as 2 hours, and I actually have more energy and more functionality at 2 to 4 hours, and on a long night like 5, than I do if I sleep for 8. So now, if I can do this at my age, somebody been lying about something. And food. Oh, you got to eat this and you got to eat that. And you got to eat this. I'll tell you what, y'all. I have 4-hour window during the day where I actually eat food. And don't get me wrong, there are some days that I put down some calories in them 4 hours. But I eat in that 4-hour time period. And most times, like, good example, last night, I sat down and I had 1 bowl of rice with 1 spoon of vegetable soup in it. That's all I ate. And that's all I will have other than my tea and coffee and water until tonight when I eat. And I'm fine. At work, I do 13 to 20 miles a night, plus all the stuff I do around my house with the gardens and other stuff that I have to take care of. And that's all I eat. So if they're telling me that with the amount of activity that I have, I need to have like 4,200 calories, somebody's lying about something. And I feel better when I eat less. That is a very important thing to tell you all. I feel better and have more energy when I eat less and I sleep less. And these go all the way back to the oldest esoteric writings and traditional writings you can find from China and India. Those who had the most energy and the most productivity slept less. There's something to this. I haven't quite got my head wrapped around it, but when you start finding it in old texts and old teachings, there's a reason why they were teaching that.
Even in a more modern angle. So Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about how, he only gets like 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night back when he was doing the bodybuilding. They're like, well, don't you mean 8? He's like, no, because like you've got to have gym time, you've still got to work, all these other angles. And that's that. But yeah, so there's for sure something to that. And as far as not getting the whole picture, we certainly don't. Like I've mentioned before a few times that Nikola Tesla had his own yoga. He had the study going on in Western engineering and also in Eastern Vedic practices. And so his full picture gave him some more help, being able to look at everything from both sides instead of just saying, oh, well, you're only eating to burn calories. Well, no, you're absorbing a lot more than just calories. You're absorbing
absolutely,
replacing all the minerals that you use things up and you expend them or expel them. And then the stuff all has to be replaced. Where you get it from,
Well, and your energy has to be replaced. People don't differentiate. When you eat food, that is calories. All right, that is like putting gas in your car. That is calories. When you add gas to your car, you put 10 gallons worth of calories in your car. So when you eat food, you are putting the fuel for your muscles, in the body. But your body has an electric charge that you have to maintain. Well, for people who meditate, do Tai Chi, Qigong, they have a heck of a lot more electric field in their body than someone who doesn't. And it's obvious from the. I'll see if I can find some links and send them to you, Scott, because there are videos that they've done with different types of spectroscopy showing the electric fields and showing the electromagnetic fields of these people in action. There used to be a series on TV. It was called Superhuman, and they
Okay.
showed a Qigong master. I'll see if I can find that episode. They showed a Qigong master, and his electric field was off the charts compared to everybody else. And all he did was breathe twice.
The
I mean,
so like there's also Carillion photography, right? You know, where they
exactly.
take amputees and there is still an electrical outline of the limb that used to be there.
Oh
It's
yeah, and the same thing with plants.
yeah, it's not hullabaloo. And you know, hopefully the folks who start to listen to this podcast more will either already know or are going to learn that we've only been partially educated in the matters of our environment and our reality. And not that I
Absolutely.
have
Well,
all
and
the answers by a long shot, but
oh no, there is so much stuff to study and so many different varieties of places to find it that energy fields and your human body. I always say start with the Vedics because they seem to have had a much tighter ground, pun intended, on what it meant with the yoga and the meditation practices. um I always say start with the East Indians because their traditions have been continuous and effective for a very, very long time. We're very limited as to the information that we get out of Southeast Asia, especially China with the Qigong people. Um, they have protected that quite well over the centuries. But you also have the Tibetan monks that do come out and speak.
yeah.
So if you want to talk about personal energy fields, that's where I would start. If you want to start talking about plants, Amamoto, the one that did the speech energy towards plants, that would be a great place to look into. And then you got the other gentleman that wasn't he the same one that did the cymatics with sound?
Um, I not Dr. Emoto, right? He was I didn't know if he did stuff with plants. I know he did stuff with water. Um, and
Yeah,
then
water was
there's
his.
yeah, Veda Austin is kind of continuing that on her own with her own angles. And she's got some pretty interesting results also. Um,
So I mean, trying to give people places to look for what you and I are talking about.
mm,
Don't ever take my word for anything, either know or don't.
yeah, yeah, we all choose
Uh,
to you're going to have your own reality, you know, if nothing else than based upon your own perceptions on what you consider to be fact and real. And some people say, oh well, I just can't believe that. Well, then you won't, and it won't be part
that's
of
it.
your reality, and that's simple. It's not to say that it won't be part of the people's reality that are around you, and they might look at you like, why don't you understand that water holds memory? You know,
Hmm.
hopefully it will get there so that the masses start to understand that, but we'll see.
Well, it's like this magic series that I'm doing, Scott, and I'm not promoting it, y'all. I just want to point out something. In this series, I constantly talk about believe or don't believe makes no difference. The people that know use it against you every day. So
Yep.
you don't have to believe it. You don't have to know it, but those that do know it use it against you every day in so many ways that it would blow your mind. Um, so not believing it and not looking into it doesn't help you.
No, no, it really doesn't. And so like, but that's the thing, like once you know something or you learn something new and you gain a new knowledge or new technology, if you don't put that into practical application, then holding of the knowledge was essentially pointless.
Exactly.
You know to learn about magic doesn't mean like you have to go out and actively try or practice it, but just to understand that it's a blend of energies and sciences and mental
Art.
yeah, art, all the arts, because they evoke emotion, right?
Hmm.
We're talking about music and how that does that. So just to be aware of it and know the environment in which you are in is, to quote Morpheus, taking your first steps into a larger world. No, wait,
Well,
no, that wasn't him. That was
wasn't there an old show years ago that said knowing is half the
GI
solution?
Joe,
Yeah,
right? GI Joe.
yeah.
Now you know, and
Knowing is
knowing's
half
half
the
the
solution.
battle.
Yeah. So it brings you to awareness, so your energy field. Just listening to us today, hopefully people have figured out they have their own energy field, and they are responsible for maintaining it, just like they're responsible for maintaining their fingernails or their hair or their makeup or whatever they do. You are responsible for your own energy field. If you are a gardener, learn how to improve the energy field of your garden, and you have improved your garden. Um, it doesn't matter whether you want to believe it or don't want to believe it. It's a fact that has been proven over time, and you can find it in all these esoteric and traditional texts that are ancient. They would not have tried to pass that information down to us if they didn't think it was relevant. And it goes back to what I just said a minute ago. Just because you don't want to know doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah, yeah. Not everybody has your best intentions, but then there are those who do, and yeah,
Well, hopefully this conversation has helped folks.
I I
You
hope
know,
so too.
it's hard to convey all this information in short segments and spurts. So I get off on tangents that I think are relevant that might bring people in from a different direction. And at the same time, Scott, I try to stay on what we're talking about too. But without the tangentials, I think a lot of people miss the overall aspect of what we're talking about with energies. A lot of people think it's woo or it's new age or it's only for people who don't do martial arts. It just so happens that martial artists are very good at harvesting it. It's not that it's just for them.
No, it's a universal tool that you can adapt to whatever you choose to focus it in. Whether it's making big rock breaking bricks with your fist, or growing a more beautiful rose. It's all energy, and you get to steer the direction of it, whether you
Well,
want to
and
use sound healing or whatever.
my comedy podcast, y'all, are very innocuous. Don't get me wrong, some of it's racy, some of it's PG-13. But the thing about it is that is a very innocuous, unsuspicious means by which my energy is used to affect other people. If I don't put the right amount of energy into what I'm doing and change the levels of it as I go, my comedy would be completely ineffective. So there's another case where I have to know the mastery of my own vocal energy. Sound is power, you all. Every word you speak, you need to own because you're putting out power with those words. Um, but with comedy, it's the same thing. You have to control the ups and the downs of your energy and the strength of your voice, which is another concentration of frequency, in order to get the comedy to work. Um, if you found somebody, there used to be a comedian that was all monotone, and it worked for him because of the way he delivered. He used the art of speech and the functionality of that monotone voice to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that way. I've got high energy and low energy, and I break it up. But it's another example of how energy is used on you all the time. Comedy. Pay attention to some of your favorite comedians and watch how they work. They have highs and lows. They amplify their voice and then they reel it back.
Yep. Just like music, right? You have sharps and flats and whole notes and half notes and tension and release. It's
That's
all
it.
things in waves, man. All things in
That's it.
waves.
Brother, I actually am enjoying these conversations.
Me too.
It doesn't seem, you and I were talking about the last one, and folks, we're just having this little bit of conversation for you all. That's the reason why I'm bringing it up. We kind of had this conversation that it seemed like it was a little rough. I went back and listened to it, and I thought, you know what? That is a genuine conversation, and hopefully people will understand that that's what we were doing. We didn't write anything down. We don't have any notes.
Nope.
We're just trying to present you things that we've come across in a conversation about them. Like you're having coffee with us.
Yeah. Yeah. By listening to this, you are just as much of a part of the conversation. And hopefully you're picking up on some of the positive vibes that we're laying down, as it were.
It's true. I hope so, folks. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be talking, right?
It's true. It's the hope of positively influencing another human being. And maybe anybody else who's listening. I have no idea. I can only see this much of the electromagnetic spectrum after all. So who knows who's listening. So, folks, Raven, please tell everyone where they can find you once more, just for their own edification.
I do not like to promote myself, but folks, if you really want some genuinely good information, it's Raven Keefer at YouTube. And as much as I don't like that platform, those playlists that I have on YouTube are phenomenal for just dropping tons of information on you, actual knowledge, not education. And then you can find me. My home podcast is at Spreaker.com, Raven Keefer. And you can find me on all the podcast repeater sites. So it's whatever one you want to use. I will tell you, though, that my no apologies did not get picked up on a few of them. So, and then I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram, Raven Keefer NA, and no apologies, enough said. And thanks for spending time with us. However you do it, it's fantastic that you're willing to dedicate some of your energy to us.
It's much appreciated, folks. Thank you so much for your time. And Raven, thank you for yours, man. You guys have a great day.